Hi, everyone, and welcome to ProWritingAid 101 for business writers. I'm Micah McGuire, ProWritingAid's B2B Digital Marketing Manager, and today I am here with Tom Wilde, our Head of Client Solutions. It is awesome to see you all here today. We have a great session in mind for you guys. For today's agenda, we are going to be covering some of the most important reports and features for business writers, including the real-time checker and goals sidebar, the readability report, the summary report, the style report, and the sticky sentences report. If we have time, we're also going to cover some of the tools that are outside of our reports that our business writers find useful. So this includes things like our style guide. But ultimately, we do want this session to be driven by what you guys would like to know. So if at any time during the session you have questions, please post them to the Q&A box. We'll have about 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the session for Q&A. And we will try to get to as many questions as possible during that time. If for some reason we are unable to answer your questions, please feel free to email us at hello, HELLO, @ProWritingAid.com, and we will make sure to get back to you as soon as we can. Just throw in the subject line that you were at today's 101 session. All right, Tom, well, I think that covers our housekeeping. Let's go ahead and jump into the demo.
Thank you, Micah. Thanks and welcome, everybody. Looks like I'm the only non-US representative on today's call. I'm in Brighton in the UK on the south coast where it's dark and rather stormy right now. So it's quite nice being inside, walking you guys through a demo and taking some questions on ProWritingAid. So just to explain, as Mike mentioned, I'm Head of Client Solutions here at ProWritingAid, which means I spend a lot of my time talking to organizations and teams about how implementing ProWritingAid into their writing processes can bring about results in terms of saved time, saved effort, better quality of published work, higher win rates for sales proposals, better communication standards internally and externally. The reality is that many of the customers we talk to, many organizations we talk to, complain because they spend so much time focusing on the small stuff in their written communication, because that's what we get distracted by. The typos, the grammar mistakes, the readability issues in overly long reports. And actually what they should be focusing on is the structure and how they're positioning themselves. That's where ProWritingAid comes in. It's the editor on your shoulder. It helps you take accountability for your writing. And it's designed to work wherever you work. So we have so many integrations for ProWritingAid that wherever you do your writing, ProWritingAid is guaranteed to pretty much be right alongside you. For the demo, we're going to focus first of all on the web editor. Okay, so you can access the web editor from ProWritingAid.com website. All license holders and anybody can use the web editor, in fact. And then we'll take a quick look after that at how ProWritingAid looks in the Chrome extension and some of our other integrations. We design it so the UI is the same. You will have the same familiarity, the same look and feel wherever you're using ProWritingAid. And you can use it in multiple places at the same time and on multiple machines. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Okay, so for today's demo, what I'm where I'm going from is I'm assuming that most of you joining today's call are somewhat familiar with ProWritingAid, but maybe don't know much more than some of the basics. So, as Micah said, if you've got questions, if I'm going too fast, if I'm covering or not explaining stuff in enough detail, pop a question in the Q&A box and we'll get to those towards the end. So what you can see on the screen is just a sample document. So this is an email I'm typing out to a client. I could be doing this here. I could be doing it in Gmail. I could be doing it in Microsoft Outlook. Okay. First thing I wanted to mention is a bunch of settings you've got available to you. So we have users all over the world. So it's really important that we support different variations of English. So you can see, I can select the type of English that our organization uses. And that will change some of the results particularly around spelling. So US, UK variations in spelling, as I'm sure you're familiar with. But I can also set my document type. So I can state which type of document it is I'm writing. So you can see, obviously, most of my writing is business writing. Right now, I'm writing an email. So let's just select that, and we'll come on to see the differences that makes. There's some subtle differences in the results they're shown on the screen for the user, but we'll see those in a minute, because where we really want to get to is where the magic happens, which is under the Reports tab.
And Tom, before we go on, under that Settings tab, some of you may have noticed that there is an option for General English. In that case, that's all comers are accepted, so it makes no distinction between, say, color spelled with an OR or spelled with an OUR.
Yeah, good point. Thanks for pointing that out, Micah. Okay, so I'm going to actually use US English for this particular demo. And let's go right ahead into the reports and look at the really juicy detail. So what I want to do as a writer is have something that is supporting me as I type. So for that purpose, we have our real-time checker. Now you can turn this on and off. Some people don't like the distraction while they're writing. Some people like to get to the end of a paragraph, get to the end of a chapter, a page, whatever, and turn it on. But if I turn it on right now, you'll see it go straight to work. See all these highlights? Each of those is a possible improvement or correction. It could be something you've got wrong, or it could be something we're just advising you that you could improve. And I can navigate those. In fact, you can see right up here. So 34, that means there are 34 possible improvements in this document. And it's a short document. So it goes to show, you know, this can get into the hundreds. Now I can navigate these improvements within the body of the document. I can literally hover over a particular highlight, and we'll go into detail in these in a second, or I can navigate them through this sidebar panel. Okay, and I can just go one at a time, highlighting, expanding, making the correction and moving on. If I want to filter, if I want to just focus on grammar, let's say, sorry, not that one. If I want to filter, I can click on the filter symbol and I can look at, say, just spelling, just grammar, just style, just passive voice. And there's a deprecated terms one here, but we're going to look at all of them right now. So how do I make the changes? I'm going to go in the body of the document. That's what I like to do. That's the kind of habit I have. I work top to bottom, making incremental improvements sentence by sentence, and it doesn't take long. The important thing with ProWritingAid is to build it into your writing habit. And at first that will feel a little bit clunky. It will take a bit of time, but over a couple of days, you get used to it. And that's when you start to see the benefits in terms of save time, because you're not having the long edits, the proofs afterwards. Let's have a look. So, okay, this is a really interesting example. We've got a piece of advice here that I'm actually going to ignore. So I don't want to make this change. So let's ignore that one. You can see this is really easy to do. It's really important to say this because writing is subjective. Okay, so no AI is going to be perfect. And no AI is going to spot absolutely every correction that you need to make. Some things you will want to ignore. We always recommend ignoring rather than disabling the rule. Disabling a rule is permanent and will apply to everywhere you use ProWritingAid. If I ignore it, it's a one-time ignore on that example. It will remember it when you reopen that document, but it's one time for that particular issue. So here we go. I've got a missing comma after prepositional phrase. So let's accept that. I can click anywhere here in the green. If I click on the arrow here, it will accept and move to the next example, next issue, sorry. Okay, so we've got a spelling, possibly confused word there. Let's make that change, that's correct. An unknown word. So if that were a real word, I could actually add this to the dictionary here, but actually it's just a misspelling of believe and it's spotted that. Let's make that change. Okay, I'm missing a determiner for right, should be the right. So let's make that change. Okay, all of. So this is a readability improvement. Readability is an interesting area because you can make huge improvements. We tend to be overly verbose in business writing. We tend to use 20 words when 10 will do. We tend to pad out our writing. Things like all of is not always necessary to use it. And actually you can make your writing clearer, more succinct by just editing out these little changes. So let's make that change as well. Okay, started doing, same as done, but you're saving the reader time. Remember, your job as a writer is to make the transfer of information from the page to your reader's brain as simple as possible. That's it, right? The simpler you make that transfer of information, the more likely you are that your reader is going to read everything you've got to say and hopefully agree with what you've got to say, particularly if it's a sales proposal or something like that. So let's make that change. Okay, one thing, I'm going to move forward to this example here because this picks up one of the kind of biggest problems in business writing, the use of the passive voice. We tend to overuse the passive voice. There's nothing grammatically correct with the passive voice, but the active voice is how our brains tend to process information, and therefore we make the transfer of information from the page to the reader's brain easier if we're using the active voice. There are reasons where you may or why you may want to use the passive, but we recommend the active. So we will always highlight passive sentences. Now, if you don't understand the difference, and many people don't, many people aren't taught this at school, this is where ProWritingAid's secret weapon comes in. See this little information icon? Click on that. It'll give you a whole lesson, a short, succinct lesson and a fun interactive one, but all about the passive and the active voice and how to transfer from one to the other. Micah, do you want to dive in?
Yeah, it's just you had touched on, Tom, that there are cases that you will use the passive voice. But again, in business writing, remember, this is something that we all tend to overuse. So even if you're in a case where perhaps you have maybe 5 different passive voice suggestions and you will accept 3 of those, that's improving your writing. Even if those 2 passive voice suggestions, you look at them and you say, okay, you know, this is something that I need to include here. Because again, that is a stylistic choice for you as the writer. And we'll get into that a little bit more whenever we dive into the style report.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so very quickly, passive and active. Passive, active, how we usually write a sentence, it's subject, verb, object. That's the order of the words in a sentence. With the passive voice, we put the object first, and we sometimes miss the subject. So here, we're saying a number of meetings have been held. There is no subject. We don't know by who. But if you introduce a subject, it's likely to make the information simpler and come across as more personal as well, because you're actually introducing people into your writing. So the examples here, the AI behind ProWritingAid is looking at this passive voice sentence and trying to work out the context and what could be the active equivalent. So you can see from a number of meetings have been held, it's suggesting there are 4 possible options. I would say number 2 here is probably the most applicable. So I'm going to apply that one. But before I do that, I just want to remind you, this contextual learning window here not only contains a short kind of description about that learning point, often it will contain a video or a quiz, something to really reinforce that learning, as well as a link to a full article. So do take advantage of that. ProWritingAid is there to build your skills, your capability. It's you as a writer. We're not just fixing your document, we're helping to improve you for the long term. Okay, so let's do that. Let's make that change. We have held a number of meetings and again, move on. So by now you're getting a feel for what we're doing with the real-time checker. Top to bottom, it'll take a few minutes to work through this document, but it improves it immeasurably. Well, I say immeasurably, but let's try and measure it because this is where ProWritingAid is very different to many other writing support tools. We see writing as a science, okay? It is an art, but you're not born a good writer. You can learn to write well if you know how to break it down into the constituent elements. And this is where goals comes in. See this little tab here? If I click on goals, you'll see it presents a whole range of metrics about my document and how I'm doing. So remember back to the beginning when I selected my document type, I selected email, general, and what it's presenting are a range of metrics that are important when you're writing email. So grammar, spelling, and style, that's important in every document. And you can see I'm currently scoring 46%. Okay, that's out of my target is 80% or higher, which is why this is in this kind of orange color, right? I need to improve grammar, spelling, and style. Style guide compliance. So I've got some style guide rules. I'm not achieving all of them. Sentence length. My average sentence length in this document is 23 words per sentence. That's too long. You should be aiming for between 11 and 18 words. And believe me, we see sentences regularly of over 50 words per sentence. You will bore your reader to death. Business jargon. Okay, I've got far too much jargon in here. Readability grade, I'm just over the top limit of readability grade. Sentence variety, I'm on target. So I've got good sentence variety. Now you'll see just very quickly, if I change the document type, let's say I'm writing a sales email, it's going to change some of those metrics. So here it's looking at things like my customer focus score, my what we call we-you linkers. How am I linking my organization to your organization in the language I'm using? Positivity, question count, spam phrase count. So these are all metrics that are much more relevant for sales emails. So really, this is a hidden weapon. I recommend you get to know and really use the goals sidebar. And it's dynamic. So let's just go back to the document. If you see my grammar, spelling, and style, 46%, let's make a few changes as we go. Accept that. Accept that. Okay, you can see my grammar, spelling, and style is now 50%. So it's improving, it's dynamic, it's working with me. All right, okay. That's the real-time checker is by far the most popular report out of all of them. But it's a very high-level view. What we want to do is get into some of the detail. And so the next step is to open the summary report, because that's going to give us the full picture of that document. It's going to give us a full range of scores. Yeah, Micah, go ahead.
Just for anyone who may be curious about, maybe what are the cases I might need to use the goals sidebar in the real-time checker versus what are the cases I might need to use the summary report. What we suggest is if you have a short document, like an email, that's only going to be about a page long, probably your best bet is going to be working with that real-time checker and that goals sidebar, because that's probably going to be something that you're going to be writing very, very quickly. If you have a long document or something that's incredibly important, let's say you're sending an update to your C-suite or something like that, you may want to go into the summary report, because as you see in the report, we do have a section that covers where your document looks good, and we have a section that covers where your document might need work. Some of those things under where your document might need work might not be covered in the goals sidebar. So it always helps if it's something incredibly important or something that you're editing, you haven't worked on it in a while, to pop over to that summary report, because essentially what this is going to do is start training you on the reports that you need to use regularly. We all have our personal writing styles. We all have places that we consistently struggle with. So for example, I am always going to run the readability report on my work. I invariably have a couple of hard to read paragraphs in there that I need to play with. So the summary report starts getting you used to, okay, where are the reports that I need to do the most?
Yeah, absolutely that. Couldn't have said it better. So, and just to say, like you can see right here, grammar, style, and spelling, they are always going to be your 3 headline reports. But then we've got the section of the metrics where your document's looking good or looking great even. And look, I can click on any of these and go down into the detail of that point in the summary report. It's a really detailed document. So take your time to get to know which bits are relevant, like Mike said, to you. You can see, so for example, under the readability grade section, we use a really simple diagram, really simple illustration to show you that, yeah, your readability grade overall may be on target, but look, you've still got probably 10% of your, 5 to 10% of your paragraphs are very difficult to read. So that's a bit of a warning flag. We go back up and I can look at the areas where my document needs work. So immediately I know, okay, I need to run the grammar report. I need to run the style report. I want to look at probably sentence length. What is this glue index? And that's one we're going to come to. It's a really interesting report, one of my favorites. Like I said, for you and your teams, I'd take the time when you're first familiarizing yourself with ProWritingAid to get to know this report. You will not be reading it top to bottom every time. You get to know which bits are relevant to your particular strengths and weaknesses, where the information that you can use time and again really lies and sits. Okay, so I know that I want to run style, I want to run grammar. I'm going to look at, here we go, sticky sentences. Remember we talked about glue index? That's where sticky sentences comes in. So let's do that. Now, some of these reports work very similar to the real-time checker. Okay, they're going to be providing information that you can click and act on right there to make the change. Style is one of those. And you can see 11 readability enhancements found. We'll have tackled some of these already. We have tackled some of these already, or similar ones in the real-time checker. So this is a bit of a continuation here. Let's have a look. I can click and navigate to any of them by clicking this arrow. It'll take me right there, just like we saw in the real-time checker. It'll highlight the particular, the word or the phrase or the clause and the suggested change. There we go. I'm going to change the majority of to most. Again, the readability and improvement. Under readability, I've also got passive voice or passive verbs. I've got long subordinate clauses. So there's a lot of information in the style and the grammar report that I can change in line right there in the thick of it. Grammar, similar. Okay, I've got spelling issues, so we include spelling under the grammar tab. You can see that. I can make that real simple change. And then I've got some grammar issues here as well. Okay, so I've got a missing hyphen. Let's make that change as well. Okay, one of our most used reports is Thesaurus. So this is really useful. We tend to use very narrow vocabulary ranges. This is a very complex report, so it takes a few seconds to run. By complex, I mean it's doing a lot of work. We tend to use very narrow vocabulary ranges. And so the Thesaurus Check is just a great way of highlighting some variation in your vocabulary. So you can have a look by clicking any of these. I can go through and look at what how I might want to vary some of the words I'm using. Now, not only do we have a Thesaurus Check in the in the toolbar, we've got a word explorer as well. If I close this report, I'll show you what I mean by our word explorer. So a word explorer works at any point in the tool by double clicking on, in fact, let's take a word like expeditious. That's a great example. Double click on the word and the word explorer tab opens and suggests synonyms for that particular word. If I then open the full explorer, it takes me into, I mean, this is a linguist's Aladdin's cave, right? It's got everything here. It's got a full description. We've even got a reverse dictionary. We've got a thesaurus. We've got alliteration examples. We've got even collocations. So you can look at what kind of adjectives you might typically use before or after that particular word. Really good for those examples where you've got something on the tip of your tongue. You're not sure about using the correct word, or you want to use a better word. This is how you really help build your skills, your vocabulary skills. Okay. So that was a quick word about the word explorer and the Thesaurus Check. Let's get into readability. This is a really good example of a report that works in a slightly different way. It's kind of an advisory report. So with readability, it gives me a whole range of readability metrics. Some of you will be familiar with these, I'm sure. Flesch Reading Ease, Flesch Kincaid grade are the most common. And I can see with the Flesch Kincaid grade, right? So my grade level of reading here is grade 9. That means you could expect a grade 9 school-age person to understand what you're saying. Believe it or not, you probably want to be aiming lower than that, or 9, 10 as an absolute maximum. It's also a great way of highlighting the difficult to read paragraphs in your document, because it hunts these out. And if I give you an example, let's navigate to this one. Here we go. So it highlights the difficult to read paragraphs and gives me the Flesch Reading Ease score of that particular paragraph. Now, with Flesch Reading Ease, sorry, go back to that. Flesch Reading Ease, the higher the number, the easier the paragraph is to read and digest. So we want to be aiming for probably a 60 or a 70, somewhere in those regions. To influence your reading ease score, what you really want to be doing is reducing the average number of words per sentence and reducing the average number of syllables per word. The assumption being that if you're using long complex sentences and long complex words, then actually the reading matter is more difficult for your reader to digest. So if you want to improve readability, I want to improve this paragraph, that's down to you. You need to go and make the edits. You need to look at those words like expeditious, change it into swift. Okay, and then rerun the report. Look at those long sentences. So here we've got, I've got a couple of this. This sentence here is, it's one sentence. Yeah, that's one sentence. So we've got a sentence there that is probably about 20, 25 words. I should be cutting that down to 2 shorter, clearer sentences. In fact, if you want to know your sentence length, just run the sentence length report, because this will give you a comprehensive, let's just remove it so we're not highlighting any one sentence. It will give you a schematic view of the length of every sentence in the document in chronological order. So yeah, here, I've got a 48-word sentence here. I've got another one as well. So although I've got good sentence variety, 48-word sentences are not going to do anyone any favors. They're the kind of sentence where you forget what you were reading at the beginning by the time you get to the end. So you go back to the beginning and read it again. Make the change. Edit those sentences down. Make them into 2 or 3 shorter sentences, and you are helping your reader. Okay. So some of these reports, like I said, advisory, it's up to you to make those changes. What I want to show you lastly is one of the last reports is sticky sentences. Sticky sentences, as far as I know, is unique to ProWritingAid. I haven't seen it anywhere else. What it does is it calculates your use of glue words, which are the 200 most commonly used words in the English language. They are your articles, your prepositions, the words that glue the working words together. They don't actually provide any context, any meaning to the sentence. They're really important. But if your sentence has more than 40% of its words as glue words, you're using a lot of padding. And actually, you should be using more working words. So when we run the sticky sentences report, what we're looking for is sentences with a high percentage of glue words. And you can see it's found 2 sentences here. Let's navigate to the first one. It's right here. Okay. So in this sentence, I've got 12 out of 17 words are glue words. You can see, and this is because I've got a beta version of ProWritingAid, we are trying to work out, there's a kind of sentence rephraser going on here, where it's rephrasing that sentence. So it's trying to work out a more effective way of saying that. But to be honest, in this example, I would probably just make a manual edit. And what I mean by that is, let's look at that sentence. Just wanted to circle back about the project we talked about around the last month or so. I mean, I'm really going around the houses there, right? Why don't you just say, just wanted to circle back? That's probably what I'd say. Even that's got some business jargon in it, so it's not ideal. But just wanted to circle back. We now run that sticky sentences report. Yeah, okay, so that's no longer sticky. It's nice, short, got a bit of jargon in it, admittedly, but nice and short and succinct.
And in those cases that you're having to do your own manual edits, it can be useful to look at this on a sentence by sentence basis and go, okay, at the bare minimum level, if I was going to strip this down to the bones of this sentence, what am I trying to convey? So here, this is likely a greeting just to say, transition into all of the discussion of the project and just say, hey, we had covered this already, wanted to come back and check in on it. And then from there, that makes it infinitely easier for you to start editing these sentences, because sometimes when we're typing things up, our fingers have a tendency to throw in a lot of extra words that we might not say in conversation.
Yeah, great point, Micah. Thanks for adding that. Okay, so as you can see, right, you've got 20 reports here. And what I should have said at the beginning is don't worry, don't panic. What we don't want you to do, what we don't advise users do, is run every single report, because to be honest, you're going to be tripling the amount of time you spend on any single document. We're catering for all writers, and everybody writes and has different strengths and weaknesses, writing different document types. So you will see that some of these reports naturally have no real meaning to the kind of writing that you're doing, and maybe much more relevant to creative writers. So again, spend time getting to know the tool, use the metrics, use a summary report, use goals to understand which of the reports are most useful, most meaningful, and provide the most value for you. Because I can guarantee there are some I haven't even touched on today, like acronym, for example. Acronyms are a great report. If you're doing a lot of technical writing, if you're using a lot of acronyms, acronym is like your safety net. It's going to find all the examples where you're not introducing an acronym the first time you use it, and you should be. Or where you are introducing it, you're given the long form and you could be just using the abbreviated version. Likewise, I think one of my favorites, all repeats, a really great report because it picks up where you're using multi-word phrases repeatedly. So here I can see I'm using the term to carry out twice. Now, that's no great shakes, right? Twice in one document. But if that were 5 times in a short document, you as a human editor may well miss that when you're proofing your own document. We tend not to see those kind of things in our own writing. But this is where AI just works brilliantly because it's picking up patterns. So I love the all repeats report. Take time. Yeah, sorry, Micah.
Because it will identify your crutch phrases. So we all have phrases that we fall back on whenever we can't think of something or something like that. And usually it's funny because those will transfer over from how you speak to how you write oftentimes. But like Tom said, computers are great at identifying these patterns. So they're fantastic at finding those little crutch phrases that you can reduce.
Absolutely.
And I think, Tom, from here, we might want to jump to the Chrome editor, and then we can jump into the Q&A because I think we have a great question that is going to transition us seamlessly into, I believe, the term base and potential style guide as well.
Okay, awesome. Let's do that. So I use Gmail in Chrome. And so I've just opened a Gmail window, but this could be any, this could be any application. This could be my CRM database. It could be whatever. But I've used exactly the same email I showed you earlier in Gmail, and you can see right now, in fact, I've already got the Chrome extension. Oh, no, there we go. I'll just turn it on there. So I've just turned it on, and you can see exactly the same highlights within the text that you saw when I had the web editor open. So we had that first one that I wanted to ignore. Then we're going into, let's just ignore that. And we're going into, commas after prepositional phrases, a misspelling of board, all these you'll remember, right? It's exactly the same in terms of the real-time checker working there and being live in front of you. However, you can do the whole range of reports from here too. See this little symbol down here, this little target? That opens the ProWritingAid goals sidebar. So I've got my goals and improvements there that we talked about before. And I can even open the full editor from here as well. So I'm effectively opening the web editor within my Chrome application or my browser application. You can see all of the same things. The only difference is the sidebar is on the left rather than the right here. But I can access all of those reports in exactly the same way without leaving Chrome. So this is what I mean about trying to give you a kind of ubiquitous UI that you can use and be familiar with wherever you're using. And exactly the same goes for Microsoft Word. So if you would download our Word add-in, you would see exactly the same on your Word ribbon. You would have a ProWritingAid tab, and you would have all of these same reports available to you. Any changes that I make here, so in this example, let's make a few changes. If I click apply changes, it reverts back to the original document, but with the changes made. So it's really simple. You're not disturbing your working kind of process or your working system. Okay, so that's the Chrome extension. And like I said, it's exactly the same in all the other integration you see too. And Mikey, you said about going into, I think we had a good couple of questions, right? Do you want to go straight in?
We have a great one that I believe comes from a online wine curation company. So this is fascinating. But they had they had said that they use a lot of industry specific terms. So can they add their own synonyms to the thesaurus so they know that what's available? So, and I think that's also, we have another question about customization possibilities. So we'll go ahead and roll into the style guide with this as well. But I think we can hit the term space and hit also adding these words to your dictionary as an individual, as well as adding it to a team dictionary.
Okay, so there's all sorts we can do here. And you remind me, I think that's, I can't remember I've been chatting to this, this contact from Wine Access, I think. So it's great to have you on the call. Okay, so a few different options we've got here. The first I'm going to tell you about is our term base. Now, think of term base as a team dictionary, because with your synonyms, you can add items to your dictionary within ProWritingAid, like I showed you, but a dictionary is personal. So that's only going to affect your use of ProWritingAid, the version that you are using. But if you want something that applies to your whole team, you're best off using our term-based. So let's navigate to there. So I'm logged in here. If you logged in and in your profile on ProWritingAid.com, you will be able to access this menu, and you can see here I've got a term base. Now, a term base is basically a CSV file. We have a template here, so you can simply download the template, and it will ask you or provide you with a range of columns to complete, and that includes what the term is, whether it's a preferred term or a deprecated term, and what your updated terms should be. So term-based is a great way of flagging preferred terms or flagging terms that should be updated. Maybe they're out of date and you're using a different term instead, which would be one way of getting over the synonym issue that you mentioned. You can see some examples here. So this is a deprecated term example. I've got the term crosshead screwdriver, but I've also included a couple of deprecated terms. So Phillips screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver. I'm not sure the same in the US, but this is terms we use or used to use in the UK for a particular kind of screwdriver. Now we use the term crosshead screwdriver. This means that having these in my term base, if I were to use this example, write either of these examples, it would flag it and say, hey, that's a deprecated term. And it would give me the option of simply clicking to change that to crosshead screwdriver instead. So for synonyms, if you've got specific ones and words that you want to use in place of other words, you could do that within the term base, and you could do it very simply. With style guides, it gives you even more flexibility. Now, with a style guide, you create a rule for each of your words or each of your terms that you want to flag. And again, I can access style guides just by going, let me just clear this a second, going to the same menu and clicking on style guides here. It will take me to this page where you can see these are all the style guide rules. These are personal rules I've created, but we've also got ProWritingAid team down here. Somewhere, there we go, ProWritingAid team. So all of these terms, all of these rules that I create will apply to everyone in the ProWritingAid team. So you can choose whether you're applying rules just to your own writing or to your team's writing. Now, there's a really simple example, okay? University of Pennsylvania said to us, well, we're really tired of students and faculty using the term Pennsylvania University because that's not our brand name, okay? So we want to automatically highlight this. So again, this could be the case of using a synonym or a word where you want to use a synonym or encourage a synonym instead. Here we have to complete 4 simple fields. There's a wrong sentence. Here's just an example of what the wrong sentence or how the word is used or phrase is used incorrectly. There's a match. So this is the exact words that I want to highlight and replace. And here's your replacement. So I'm matching Pennsylvania University, replacing it with University of Pennsylvania. And then I provide a message. And that's what's going to appear to my reader, or to the writer rather, when that is flagged. So if I save that, I'll go back into my example if I can find it. Let me just clear my floating panel, make some space, hit this real-time checker. Turn that on. Sorry for the delay. There we go. Okay. So there is the style guide rule that I've created. Now, what I've shown you is a really, really simple example, and it's how you could handle synonyms. No problem at all. But it will take you time because you'll be adding each one individually. The real strength of style guide rules is that it can get incredibly complex. It uses something called POS tags, which is parts of speech tags. It's linguistic terminology for how we classify language. So if I'll try and give you another example without going too complex. Let's take a look. Okay, here we go, impactful. The word impactful is one of those, what in the UK we call a Marmite word. You either love it or you hate it. A lot of people really don't like it because generally there are much better adjectives you can use. So this rule highlights the use of the term impactful and suggests alternative, better adjectives. However, what we know is that impactful is often preceded by an unnecessary adverb. So we want to include that in the match as well. So here we are highlighting, or we've got an example wrong sentence, it's incredibly impactful. The match is impactful, but we've got this RB beforehand, and RB is the POS tag for adverb. And this tilde tells us that it's optional. So we're saying to the AI, we're saying, hey, if you see an adverb before the word impactful, include that in the match. If there's no adverb, just include impactful, just match impactful. And in a replacement, we're going to suggest 5 alternative adjectives. And we separate each by the @ symbol, because that means they are each a separate clickable object. And there's my message. So again, let's test this. Save, go back into our sample, create some space. I'm going to write it twice actually. And I'm doing that because I want to remove the adverb in one example. Okay, so there we go. Immediately highlighted. There is my message. There are my 5 alternative adjectives. Let's choose one. And it's doing exactly the same even when the adverb isn't present. So you can see style guides. I mean, you can even use regular expression in style guide rules to get into some really significant kind of programming detail, as you can see by the look of a rule like we've got here. Now, we don't have time to get into this today, but needless to say, we do offer a kind of, if you like, a style guide consulting service where we can transform your style guides and automate them for you. But this is built, and we have guides. I think Mike is going to add some links that will help you get started with style guides yourselves.
And as far as other customizations options, we also offer a text expander tool that we call Snippets. Unfortunately, we don't have time to cover it today, but if you are somebody that has a lot of repetitive text that you need to type, like say your company address, your company phone number, anything like that, we do have that tool available that it will store that in a snippet, and you can reach that command and basically a backslash in writing out the name of your snippet anywhere that you use ProWritingAid. So that is another tool that does help with customization. Really, like Tom said, the power of this style guide comes into play with grammar. You can get incredibly complex grammar rules written into your style guide and make sure that they are applied, because we all know that it doesn't matter if you have the best style guide in the world, if your team has it in a drawer somewhere gathering dust or gathering dust on their hard drive.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had so many conversations with organizations that have a style guide, but no one knows about it after about 6 months. This is how you make sure that that style guide is ever present and always checking for that consistency. Okay, Micah, so I guess we're kind of coming to time then. Anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like us to go through?
Do we have any other questions? Just we can try to cover this last 5 minutes. We are trying to get these to where they're about 45 minutes for you guys. So it's just give you back about 15 minutes of your day. So if no one has any questions, we'll pop off. But if we have some questions left, we are happy to answer them. For specific questions about the style guide, email us at hello@prowritingaid.com. Put in the subject line, ProWritingAid 101 for business style guide questions, and Tom and I will make sure to get back to you on that. Okay, anything else? And again, all of you, I hope, saw the links that I've included that will cover some adding simple style guide rules, covering more advanced style guide rules, our snippets guide. And then if you're looking at ProWritingAid for your teams, we have our demo sign up page, as well as an individual licensed person's page or our email newsletter sign up. Alrighty, well, it looks like we have covered everyone's questions. Thank you all so much for being here today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.